All right. Hello, Facebook family, and welcome to the Word Among Us Summer Book Club series. We are so excited because this summer we are interviewing 6 amazing authors that you haven't heard from before. And what's new and improved about our interviews now is that they are going to be answering questions that come directly from readers. So we have created a special summer sale. You can purchase the books that we were going to be talking about on our website. I'll put a link in the comments so you can check out this particular book after this interview. Today, we have a very, very special treat. We have one of our newest authors, Dr. John Olesnavage, and joining him is Monica, who is a reader of the book. She's going to be talking about how the book has transformed her life. So we'll hear both from John, who wrote the book, and Monica. Dr. John Olesnavage is a clinical psychologist. He is a teacher, a guide, an activator, and an author who can inspire you to discover your powerful question and create your legacy. And he's the author of Your Most Powerful Question, Finding Purpose and Meaning in God's Plan. So John and Monica, welcome.
Thank you, Mel.
Welcome.
Of course. Oh, good. So John, I thought to kick us off, you can kind of just give us a brief overview of the book, and then we'll go into some of the questions from our readers.
Okay, thank you. The book really kind of shares the path I traveled to arrive at this point. In 1995, I was introduced to the idea of a powerful question in a moment that feels, when I look back at it now, is kind of divinely inspired, recognizing that everyone has a powerful question embedded in their life story. And when teased out or when encouraged to come out, that one question can really lead a person to their own truth. And ultimately, I've discovered to God also, God who is truth. So it's been an incredible journey over the last 10, 12 years of discovery on my part. And so the book's really a sharing of my discovery process and then helping the reader develop some steps that help someone find their own powerful question, because it's kind of daunting to some to actually discover a question. It needn't be, but the idea of a question is, frankly, in a funny sort of way, is very challenging for a lot of us who are more tuned to finding answers than questions. And that's maybe the most important thing this book has to say, is that questions are the answer.
I love that.
It's sort of an explanation, a historical perspective of where it comes from, and then steps to help you find yours.
That's so interesting that, yes, we are all very comfortable finding answers, but finding your question is maybe a little more complicated in theory, but maybe not in practice with your book here. Right. So I want to jump into one of our first questions, and it comes from, it's a great way for us to kick this off. It comes from Rebecca in Georgia. And she says, the idea behind Your Most Powerful Question is really intriguing. Can you explain the concept and how it can help people?
Okay. The book is specifically designed to help you find your powerful question, which will be the gateway to your purpose. It will ignite when you find that question, it will ignite your passion. It will reveal your purpose. It will take you to your place in God's plan. Frankly, it happens automatically. The question, when discovered, will actually give you, it will come with a visceral response. And we've heard all sorts of kind of different responses. People get goosebumps, stomach ache, headache. We've had a variety of shortness of breath. My own arrived in the form of just not being able to speak for a while. You will always, when you find the right question, your powerful question, it will arrive with the kind of visceral response that tells you, wow, there it is. And for some reason, I need to pursue this wherever it leads me.
Wow. So this is a question for me as you're speaking. Can readers expect to get their question when after they've finished reading this book?
Some do. Some need further processing or time to let it simmer. I just spent time with a priest in our diocese who did arrive at his question by the time he ended the book. And it turned out he really had that question since being a young toddler, practically. His question, he said that he had always arrived at everyone's home asking the same question: what is there to eat? And he said he admitted he was a bit of a chubby child. As he grew, that question kept surfacing in a variety of ways. And he realized after reading my book, he was getting that kind of response that says, holy smoke, that's my question. And as a priest, he's started already writing the outline for a book that talks about, we all have a hunger. What is the food we are looking for? And as a priest, of course, he provides that on a very spiritual level. So
Wow.
yes, some people arrive at it right away, and some people arrive with the question already in their own history, but they've never given it permission. They've never given it permission to be their question. This book gives that kind of permission. Others need more time, and so it's a very individualized approach.
Right.
But ultimately, everyone who wants one, who pursues it in a genuine way, will eventually find it. With a caveat, it especially helps those two kinds of people, although they're really intertwined. People who want to make a difference, and then people who want to know, what does God want next? I found in the last 10 years, those are the two types of people who respond and get the most out of it.
I love that story from the priest. I think that is like such a good story. And as you said, what is there to eat? I was like, well, how does that turn into a question? And I was like, right. There's this, we can turn that into a spiritual hunger. So I want to go to our next question, which is from Lillian in Arizona. She said, what made you want to share it with others? And what has been the biggest obstacle, or even an obstacle that you have faced in sharing it with others?
Well, initially, when I discovered the concept and then discovered my question and saw how it was changing my life and bringing me a lot closer to God in my faith as a Catholic, I started sharing with clients I worked with. I had always shared everyone should have a dream. And that's a big believer. I want people to have dreams and be pursuing them. But then I started sharing there is a level above a dream. And people would look at me very confused. And I'd said, it's having one question you can follow the rest of your life. And as that developed, I was challenged back in 2011 to develop a program that would help others find their own powerful questions in a structured kind of way. And then in 2016, arriving at Sacred Heart Seminary in Hales Corners, discovering that it was so well received, it's now a required course in the master's program for theology there. And the students, and Monica was one of the initial students, have really brought it to life in ways I never could have imagined. And I'm very blessed, grateful. What can I say?
Wow, that's awesome. So Monica, I want to ask you, we have a couple questions specifically for you, and this comes from James in Maryland. Would you tell us about your experiencing using this discernment process and reading this book, and how has it changed your life?
Yes, so I was one of those theology students, an old theology student in the master's program, and it was a required course for us. And I think everyone went into it a little skeptical, kind of wondering, and everything he said has been, spot on. It was a question I already had in my past, but didn't recognize. It took me a long time to kind of figure it out, but at the same time that you go through the book and some of the exercises, I was also going through theology classes. And I wanted a very intellectual or spiritual question. And instead, my powerful question is, what love is needed in this moment? And I was like, this is so mushy. I don't want this to be my question. But the love that Jesus calls us to is this radical love that's hard to do. And I have found that kind of taking ownership of that and, stopping in the midst of a very difficult situation and just kind of going, what love is needed to come into this moment? Is it an employee melting down? Is it, my mother who had dementia, where a moment is all you've got? Is it this moment in church history, this moment in a teenager's life? And so having this question gives me clarity and intentionality and kind of permission to really dive deeper into bringing love into wherever we are. Sounds mushy.
I don't know if I would say mushy. That's kind of a really great question. I probably would be the same way and want something like, yes, very like esoteric, but like that, what a powerful question, right? And I think that's now, can I ask you, this is a Molly question, do you say that to yourself? Like, do you say out in your head or out loud, do you say your question in those moments?
I do. And, once I accepted that as, yeah, that is my question, I realized I had been saying it for a long time, like sitting with my mother who had dementia, or one of my sisters passed away and I walked into the home of her children, and you can just feel the pain and the hurt. And you just kind of have to stop and say, where can you help bring love into this? I use it every single day. And because I practice it now, it's become a lot more second nature, where, we all face conflict all the time and difficult conversations. And it really helps me stop and think about how to come out of it with people feeling a little bit more loved than worse going in. So I use it all the time.
Wow. I love that. So God speaks to me a lot in these interviews that we do and through conversations with people. And I needed to hear your question today because the difficult conversations I've had recently, maybe that's what I've needed to ask myself in those moments. So thank you for sharing that with us. I have another question for you, Monica. Have you continued to use the most powerful question as a discernment tool?
I really do. So when I was going for my master's in theology, I was already retired. And, I take a look and I go, what the clerical abuse that happened was very hard for me to sit in listening sessions and hear what some people had gone through. And, so I bring that question to what love does my church or my parish need in this moment? And it's helped me do things I wouldn't normally do, right? So writing a letter to the seminary saying, I think you should think about restructuring this way, or maybe you need a check in the system. Nothing I would have normally have done. So, and I do that constantly every day. So now I'm employed here as a vice president, and I'm really just a Catholic mom. But I'm constantly using my question to help push me forward to what is the right thing in this moment, because love is always the right thing. It might not be the nicey nice thing. It might be tough love, but love is always the right thing in that moment.
Right. Yeah. It might be the hard honesty, but yeah. And I love that it was divine inspiration back in 1994, and it's continuing to be divine inspiration on a daily basis. So that's awesome that it's continued to impact your life in that way. I have a question from Marianne in California. John, maybe you can answer this one. And then Monica, if you want to jump in, is this book only for people who have major life decisions to make, or can it be helpful for everyone?
Clearly, it would be helpful for anyone, including students, who really want to know what's my purpose in life and what difference does God want me to make. I also think that it's really the beginning of adult faith formation. I think until we find a compelling that we're willing to follow it, that we're really just memorizing prayers and memorizing the do's and don'ts of our faith. When we have a question, we really start a different level of involvement with God and with our faith. And that's passed down through, if you dig a little in all of the important or all the saint lives, you'll discover their powerful question. Thomas Aquinas had his at age 5. His question was very simple: what is God? Oh. And of course, by the end of writing the Summa Theologica, he told us all what is God, and material we're still using today, but it specifically grew out of his 5-year-old question. Maximilian Kolbe, before the Gestapo arrested him and sent him off to Auschwitz, he finally received the answer to a question he had had ever since seminary days. That question being, who are you, O Immaculate Conception? Mm-hmm. And he received the answer 2 weeks before he went to Auschwitz. But he said apparently it was a question that he had told frequently, that was a driving question for him, because after she appeared to him in one of his moments, he was just driven by that desire to know. And God's gift to him just before he was executed was to give him the answer. And I think that probably was a very affirming thing. I want to get back also to something Monica said, and you asked, when you discover your question, it becomes the lens you look at life the rest of your life. You may evolve, the question may evolve. I'm asked that frequently, will it ever change? Yes, it will evolve as you evolve, but it becomes the lens that you don't have a choice. You start seeing every day through that new lens. And it's a very transformative experience. And it's impossible. That's why I think it's also evangelizing. It's impossible to go to your own truth and start to live your own truth without finding God there. Mm-hmm. So I've had tremendous success with people who are, this isn't just for the front row Catholics. This is for the Catholics in every row, and even those sitting outside in the parking lot waiting for their spouses.
I'll echo that, because it can kind of meet people wherever they are. So of course I've given the book to all of my kids and my husband. Everyone's at different stages, but when you start pursuing your own truth, you bump into God along the way. And I also think, kids are struggling so much with anxiety, trying to figure out the perfect path they need to go on. There are lots of good paths to go on, and they can get paralyzed. But if they can find a lens to look at it, then they can find their way to move forward. It doesn't have to be super religious. I'm thinking of all the different powerful questions you've had in the past. What is truth? What is an authentic relationship? What makes you say, wow? But it gives people a focus and a way to fit in as they're going down the path of their life.
That's a great point. And I think both of you just mentioned this, that is like, it's almost like a good foundation to start. It can be for anyone, of course, but finding purpose and meaning is way different than just memorizing prayers, and it's like, those are good too. But when you have that lens or that good foundation, you can build a lot from that. And I like that you mentioned that your question can change, it can evolve, and as you go down your life path. So those are really great points. I'm super excited about this book. This is a great segue, have you introduced it to youth? I know you mentioned in the seminary, but have you done like a young adult program? This comes from Jessica in Maryland.
I did, run the program in a Catholic high school. A small Catholic high school outside of Petoskey, Michigan, for 1 year. And the students loved it. The teacher loved it. We weren't able to continue it because the principal changed, et cetera. But it was very rewarding. Students love the opportunity to talk about, what am I going to do with my life that's going to make a real difference? And how do I make it my life instead of what my parents expect, instead of what everybody else expects or all. So it was extremely well received. And I just finished a 3 or 4 week session with students at Northern Michigan University here through their campus ministry. And Father Dustin, our priest there, was so gracious to let me come in, and students, I had a group of female students and then separately a group of male students. And they also love to have a place to talk about what is purpose and what is my purpose, not just other people's purpose. So out of involvement, I want to see a lot more, because I know this could really have a benefit for the young people. You don't have to be my age to finally start thinking about what your purpose in life is. So, yes.
Very cool. And Monica, you mentioned you gave it to your kids. Did you get any feedback from that?
Yeah, so they were teenagers.
Yeah.
So did anyone go all the way down the path? No, but we've had some really interesting conversations. And, that's good enough for me when they're teenagers, just to be able to have conversations about some of these ideas. Like, what sorts of questions do they find give them a lot of purpose or focus, or what are the questions that keep them up at night, right? And so from that, it was really useful. And, I'm still waiting. I think a couple of them will get their question yet.
Well, I have to say, I have a 15-year-old, so that's what I'm thinking this whole time, and not necessarily, like you said, going down the whole finding the question, but just conversation. And like you said, there's so much anxiety in everyone, but especially I know teenagers. And so it's what a comfort it would be to like kind of go through this with her, I think, for me.
Right.
Very cool. Okay, so we have a question from Mike in Michigan. How would you recommend parents or grandparents, I just answered this, use this with their children or grandchildren? So Monica, you've done this. And so we're going to skip to Father Richard in Florida. How have you seen this, your most powerful question approach transform parishes? And how can a parish start to implement this?
Well, I'm sorry.
You have one? Immediately I'm thinking of Dr. Olesnavage did Powerful Question with my cohort, the group of students I went through theology with. And during COVID, one of them is the manager of a food pantry, an outreach center. And of course, during COVID, she lost all of her volunteers. And our program has its own powerful question, which is, how do you heal and evangelize a fractured world? So all of us got together one day and we said, if this is our program's powerful question, what can we do in the middle of this COVID? And we all started masking up and social distancing and meeting every Sunday in this church basement to make sandwiches. And we did that for a year and a half. And that was our way of living that powerful question and keeping that ministry and that parish going, despite the fact that you couldn't have volunteers in.
That's amazing. That's an awesome testimony.
And so the simple answer I'd add to it is there could be some book discussion groups. There could be, and I've been working on, with the Word Among Us, a study guide that can be useful with that also.
Very cool. So more on that to come. And then one of the last questions that we have is from Laura in New York. And we've kind of answered this throughout, but how will reading your book change my life, and how can I get started?
I think getting started says just simply buy the book and start reading it, but I would just suggest to give yourself permission to say, what does God want me to do? And It doesn't have to be anything but what's real for you, and to not shy away from it because it's too big or too much or too above where we're at. But God's calling us, as Monica said, where we're at, and not where we're going to be in 20 years. And so I think a young person or a student or a middle-aged person could pick this up and start pursuing what is their question, which, by the way, is challenging, because by the time we graduate from high school, I swear most of us have question anxiety. Don't raise your hand. Don't admit you don't know anything. Just Google it. We need to have the courage to start asking the kind of questions that St. Augustine asked, that all the great saints asked. And we lack that courage in our society right now, which is part of the reason why kids are grabbing guns and thinking this is all a video game and they don't care whether they live or die. Nobody's teaching them to have a question and to pursue a question. It's just, what's the answer? And unfortunately, it's a pretty dark answer in most of these cases, in all of these cases. So I would just say, give yourself permission to say, God created me to do something special. All of us. Give yourself permission to find out what that is.
Yeah, that's an amazing way to end. Monica, do you have anything to add?
I would say give yourself permission and time and space and quiet, and don't rush it. It's worth it. It's really worth figuring out. And I really am a huge proponent of it.
Yeah, I just, Monica, you are one of many people that we've heard from who have gone through this book, gone through the program, and have found their question and have been transformed. So John, thank you so much for developing it and writing the book. And I just want to say, you said this book is great for two types of people. And you said anyone who, I can't remember what it was.
Who wants to make a difference.
Wants to make a difference.
And anyone who wants to know, what does God want me to do next?
I love that. So I'm going to write that down and remember that for next time. But everyone should go and check out this book, Your Most Powerful Question. It's on our bookstore at bookstore.wau.org. Like I mentioned, I'm going to put that in the comments. John and Monica, thank you so much for joining us today. This is awesome. This is like inspiring me to go through it. It's an exciting book. It's an exciting idea. You can get it as part of our summer book club sale. You can also visit John's website, and I have it written down here. So it's askyourpowerfulquestion.com. I'm going to put that in the comments as well. And you can learn more about the retreats that you're doing. And it's got a link to the book as well. So check it out on Amazon, our bookstore, or John's website, askyourpowerfulquestion.com. Thank you guys so much for joining us. It was awesome to be with you both. Thank you everyone who sent in questions. And join us June 23rd. We're going to be same time, same place. We're going to be talking with Father Mark Thibodeau and his book, Ascending with Ignatius. So John and Monica, I hope you have a great rest of your day. And thank you so much.
Thank you, Molly. Thank you.
Bye.
And Molly.